ॐ परतत्त्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्णसमाज्ञया यो धर्मस्थापनरतो वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम्. Friends, today we start a new series, of course from Swami Vivekananda, and after studying Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, it was natural for all of us to turn to Swamiji's Jnana Yoga. And so, a question might come in the minds of some of you, or already it has already come, why practical Vedanta in between? In between in the sense, I am going to take Jnana Yoga after this. Now, today, I will be talking a little external things. And you see, both the books I have brought. You see, Jnana Yoga, Practical Vedanta. Now let me tell the relation between these two books. And something more also. In America, specifically in New York, Swamiji took two series of classes simultaneously. One was termed Jnana Yoga for beginners, and the other was termed Jnana Yoga for advanced listeners. And this series on Jnana Yoga for advanced listeners was in the traditional philosophical method of explaining Sankhya philosophy, and then what are its shortcomings and how Vedanta fulfills it, and then to look at Sankhya or everything in the Vedantic light. That was the nature of this series on Jnana Yoga for advanced listeners. Later on, Swami Saradananji at Udbodhan office compiled these lectures in a book form. And the name of that book is Science and Philosophy of Religion. If you have seen that book, or you can say it, the name of the book is Science and Philosophy of Religion. There, the Swamiji's lectures on Jnana Yoga for advanced listeners have been compiled, edited and published from the Udbodhan office. Swami Saradananji has done that. Now, the other series, Jnana Yoga for beginners, was Swamiji's lectures on various Upanishads. We can see that the Upanishad book is in Swamiji's hand and is quoting from that several verses. So the Jnana Yoga for beginners was a series of lectures in New York on Upanishads. And there, the dates approximately are January and February 1896. January and February 1896, Swamiji has given a series of talks on Upanishads under the heading Jnana Yoga for Beginners at New York. Now, after that he went to London. And in London, there was only one series. There were other series on other topics. But on Jnana Yoga, there was only one series. And there again, Swamiji has taken up Upanishads one by one in the hand and he has dealt with Upanishads in London. And the dates are June to November. There are some gaps. Perhaps after the summer break, Swamiji resumed the talks. And so, June to November, Swamiji has delivered lectures on Jnana Yoga, did not call it for beginners or advanced sadhakas, and that was on the Upanishads. There, on the 5th of November, now in the book Jnana Yoga, how they are arranged, the London lectures have been taken first. All the London lectures of Swamiji on Upanishads have been taken first. Afterwards, though chronologically New York lectures are before London lectures, but in the arrangement of the book, the New York lectures have been taken afterwards, after the London lecture. That is the nature of Swamiji's Jnana Yoga. Now coming back to the London lectures, on the 5th November 96, Swamiji was taking Upanishad by Upanishad. And on the 5th November 96, Swamiji took up Chandogya Upanishad in his hand. In Jnana Yoga, you will find the heading of the lecture, The Freedom of the Soul, delivered in London 5th November 1896. That was the lecture on Chandogya Upanishad. After that lecture, people have asked Swamiji, you are telling theory. It is beautiful indeed to listen, but can it be put into practice? That was the question asked in the London lecture, in or after the London lecture on Chandogya Upanishad, termed The Freedom of the Soul. It comes middle of the book, because after that the American lectures are taken. But the last among the London lectures. The last among the London lectures, 5th November 1896, Freedom of the Soul, that is Chandogya Upanishad, and the question was asked, and same thing continues in 4 more lectures on Chandogya Upanishad. The name is Practical Vedanta 1, 2, 3, 4. You will see 10th November, 5th, 10th, 12th, 13th. No. Yes, 10th, 12th, 17th and 18th. 10th, 12th, 17th and 18th November, lectures continued on Chandogya Upanishad. The heading is Practical Vedanta Part 1, 2, 3, 4, which are nothing but continuation of Swamiji's lectures on Jnana Yoga, which concluded in London on the last lecture being on Chandogya Upanishad. This is the relation between the two books. Now, up to the 4th edition of Jnana Yoga, these were included in the book Jnana Yoga. After this, Freedom of the Soul, we had these 4 lectures included in the book Jnana Yoga. In the 5th edition, we see the preface to the 5th edition from the book on Jnana Yoga. There it is mentioned that in this edition, the get-up and printing of the book have been improved. Lectures on Practical Vedanta, 4 in number, are now omitted in order to keep the bulk of the book proportionate to the new size. These lectures are available in a separate book form. So, and another thing I will tell you today, in the Bengali edition of Jnana Yoga, these are still inside Jnana Yoga. So, they are not a separate subject. Now, why we take them first and then Jnana Yoga is the next question. And the answer is, this is what my Guruji taught. My Guruji told me that if we read Jnana Yoga independently, it gives to understand Vedanta, to those who can understand Vedanta, and Swamiji has explained so beautifully that reading Swamiji's lectures on Upanishads we do understand, and they yield a intellectual pleasure. To understand the intricacies of Vedanta in clear terms from Swami Vivekananda generates an intellectual pleasure, and then we are most likely to forget that they have to be realized. The very fact that Vedanta is a matter of experience, Vedanta is not a theory, Vedanta is a matter of experience, and we have to experience the truths told in the Upanishads is forgotten because of the intellectual pleasure generated by listening to or studying Swamiji's lectures on the Upanishads. To remedy that, we take up the practical Vedanta first, so that it will be ingrained in our mind that they are to be practiced. And when we are permeated with this idea that Vedanta is to be realized, Vedanta is to be made practical, Vedanta is a practical science. When this is ingrained in our mind, then if we turn to Jnana Yoga, this obstruction of standing as an intellectual pleasure will not happen. This is how the great masters know the psychology of human mind. And so, he told me, whenever you want to study or you want to lecture on Jnana Yoga, it will always be advisable to start from practical Vedanta, which was nothing but a part and parcel of Swamiji's Jnana Yoga, both being lectures on Upanishads, and this, as I already told you, 5th November lecture on Chandogya, and the further 4 lectures on Chandogya. So these further 4 lectures have been named Practical Vedanta Part 1, 2 and Part 1, 2, 3 and 4. I hope I have made the position very clear to you, and we are, by Thakur's grace, going to take up Jnana Yoga also, if God permits, after this study of the practical Vedanta, so that the mooring of the mind is on the practical side, and once that is ingrained, the Jnana Yoga will further add to our desire to practice or realize those Upanishadic truths and not end in mere intellectual pleasure. So, after this rather longish introduction, which was very essential to understand the relation between these two books or these two series of lectures, and Bengali edition is very differently constituted. If the same topic is taken in New York and London, they are put near each other. While in English, in Jnana Yoga, London lectures first and then New York lectures. That is how the arrangement has been made. And London lectures continued as Practical Vedanta are in a separate book form. So with this introduction now, we turn to Swamiji's method of Practical Vedanta. Here I tell you something new. The more modern the scholar, Swamiji's sentence I am using, the more modern the scholar, the more mistakes he makes in understanding things spiritual which are Indian. What happened? On a very superficial grounds, I don't remember the name. Some philosopher in Germany, recently, maybe 5-10 years back, he has written a book, and his theory is that to call it a theory is a laughing stock. Swamiji had no idea of practical Vedanta until he met Professor Deussen, who was influenced by Schopenhauer. Professor Deussen was influenced by Dr. Schopenhauer, and after meeting Deussen, Swamiji gave the lectures on practical Vedanta. Now, this much is such a superficial, flimsy ground. So Swamiji's idea of practical Vedanta comes from Schopenhauer and Deussen, while Swamiji has shown the mistake of Schopenhauer in various places. So Swamiji will be influenced by that. And Swamiji's idea of practical Vedanta is much, much, much before he went to America. And Swamiji has clearly mentioned that. I request you people to study Sri Ramakrishna Leela Prasanga, or as it is translated in English, Sri Ramakrishna the Great Master, or the later translation, Sri Ramakrishna and his Divine Play. During one of the talks on Vaishnavism, Sri Ramakrishna told they emphasize three things. Taste in taking God's name, worship of the Vaishnavas, and compassion on jivas, that is their term. The ordinary man, they call it jivas. And after telling these three, Sri Ramakrishna explained how this taste in taking God's name is helpful, and also why we should respect the Vaishnavas. And when he came to the explanation of the third, he was obstructed by his own realization. His mind recoiled. He went into samadhi. And coming out of the samadhi, he said, you insect, a small insect, how will you show compassion? Not compassion, but worship of the jivas with the awareness that they are Shiva. Shiva Jnane Jiva Seva. There were several listeners, including Swami Vivekananda, and after the meeting broke, you may say, when Swami Vivekananda came out, today new series is started on practical Vedanta. You are attending? Okay, okay, okay. Okay, okay. Right. When Swamiji came out of the meeting, at the conclusion of the meeting, those friends who had gathered, Swamiji said, today I saw a new light. I saw that Vedanta can be practiced. I saw that it is a great light for man traveling any path, whether he travels the path of Karma Yoga, or Bhakti Yoga, or Raja Yoga, or Jnana Yoga. A new light has been thrown. And he said, previously we were taught that if we want to follow Jnana Yoga, we should throttle all our soft ideas, like loving and all those soft feelings of the heart. We have to throttle and become dry, and then only we have to pursue the Jnana Yoga. That is what has been taught up till now. But today I saw a new light telling that none of our feelings are wrong or bad. We can turn all our feelings towards God by this one idea that we are worshipping Shiva in the form of Jiva. And a lot of explanation Swamiji has given there. You please read that. And that is what he called the practical Vedanta. So, this fellow in Germany perhaps is unaware. Now, I have a friend, name if you want, Arpita Mitra, and she was a fellow in the Institute of Advanced Studies in Shimla. And there she worked for 1.5 years to contradict that German philosopher. So, anyway, though it is an external thing, unconnected with our spiritual pursuit, but because it has come as a wrong thought, I thought that let me tell you the gross mistake, superficial. Because he met Dyson, so he talked on practical Vedanta. While Swamiji is telling a question has been raised after his lecture on Chandogya, and so I am talking. And the basis of Swamiji's practical Vedanta dates far, far back in Dakshineshwar, while Sri Ramakrishna was explaining the tenets of Vaishnavism. And there Swamiji has shown that all the paths are illumined by this new doctrine, which came from Sri Ramakrishna's Samadhi, from Sri Ramakrishna's realization that thing has come, and all the softness necessary in compassion are kept intact, but the direction is changed. Not that. Swamiji has spoken about this in everywhere, in Karma Yoga and everywhere. That if we give 1 rupee to a beggar, telling, take my fellow this 1 rupee, that is not giving at all. Let the giver kneel down and request, let the receiver stand up and accept. That is Swamiji's words. So, we are dealing with God's forms everywhere. And that is why we have to be respectful towards everybody, not compassion, but worshipping. That is Swamiji called the practical Vedanta. And so, these lectures on practical Vedanta are Swamiji's testimony to what he learned from Sri Ramakrishna and realized in his own life, and that he is going to teach us or help us to grow in that life. Now we see, now I come to the book Practical Vedanta, Part 1, delivered in London, 10th November 1896. Now let us concentrate on the title of the book, Practical Vedanta. What do we mean? Practical does not always mean to be done by hands. There is another misconception. In Bengali, they say, hate nate kora. Hate nate is not a literal term. Hate nate means to put into practice. And Swamiji will tell us that practice, I will tell later on, which has not come at all. Between theory and practice, do you know something? When we learned science in our college days, we remember that theory, say physics or chemistry, the theory has been taught. Then a separate class was taken of how to practice or how to practically see what we have been learning in the theory. We could call it the theory of the practical. And then we have to do the practical. So there is a link between theory and practice actual, and that can be called the theory of the practical. And we had to learn both in physics and in chemistry the theory of the practical before we could do actual practical. That is the position of Swamiji's lectures, please. Swamiji is showing that these things can be practiced, have been practiced, and how to practice, how to bring them into practice, the link Swamiji is showing. So, practical does not mean what we do by hands. And now let us turn to the basic idea in all these four talks. Now let me tell you, this aspect of practical Vedanta, according to Swamiji's dealing, has three different stages. Three different stages of practical Vedanta. One is that Vedantic truths are there and their implications in our daily lives are there. Whatever we can, in Hindi we say वेदांत को जीवन में उतारना है. उतारना means bringing them down. Utarna means reflecting. So, for example, Vedanta teaches oneness, and so universal love is practical Vedanta compared to any narrow idea of love or compared to the feeling of hatred. Feeling of hatred is not practical Vedanta. Feeling of love is practical Vedanta because Vedanta has taught oneness. Second thing Swamiji will teach us, Vedanta has taught that thou art that. So we have to realize that. But the implication tells us that we have to be self-confident. We have to have faith in ourselves because we are really the reality. And so we have to have faith in ourselves. But faith in ourselves again is not faith in my power, my intellect, my feeling, no. Swamiji will tell us here in this book, faith in oneself means faith is in all, because the same self is in all. So here again, it is the implication of the Advaita Vedanta that is inculcating as faith in oneself and faith in all. So, these are the example only I gave you. Several other things Swamiji will teach as the first stage of practical Vedanta. And the first stage of practical Vedanta will mean that implications of Vedanta which can be put into practice today. And with that help what happens? We grow. When we grow, we become the real adhikaris of Vedanta. So, to bring us in line with Vedanta, we must draw the implications, and that can be put into practice immediately. This is the first phase of practical Vedanta according to Swamiji. Then there is the real practical Vedanta. The second phase of Swamiji's practical Vedanta, and that is the meaning is how to bring this Vedanta in realization. We cannot practice, but when our consciousness changes, the practice will automatically come. And Swamiji has dealt with it in great detail. How our mind should be filled with those thoughts, to the extent that he says it should mingle with every drop of our blood, with every breath, with every sensation of the pulse. It should go into our mind and build up of the personality, what we call manan. And so he will tell us, shifting a little from Chandogya, bringing the idea from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, he will tell us that practical Vedanta means Shravan, Manan, Nididhasan, by which we realize the Vedantic truths, and then automatically our life will become a practical Vedanta. So second phase of practical Vedanta, I am giving you just a perspective, then only you can understand the details. So I am giving the perspective on Swami Vivekananda's practical Vedanta. The first phase will be to find the implications and practice them from day one. And second phase will be to realize the Vedantic truths in our life, to experience the Vedantic truths in our life, by which our life will get converted and the Vedanta will come out in our practical life. And the third phase, immediately following this, is that the life of the perfected man. That is the real practical Vedanta. If a man has gained perfection by the teachings of Vedanta, what happens to his life? That is the practical Vedanta on the highest scale. And so, but that will come to our life only after we have taken these two steps. First is, let us be influenced by the implications, let us practice them. Whatever we find as implications, let us practice them. We become fit for realizing Vedanta. And then, second phase, most important, equally important or most important, is to realize those truths by Shravan, Manan, Nidhasan. That Swamiji has slightly shifted from Chandogya Upanishad because all the Vedanta believes what is given in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Atma Vayare Drashtavya, Shrotavya, Mantavya, Nididhyasitavya, Evam Vayare Drashtavya. Yajnavalkya is telling his dear wife Maitri, this Atman about which I have been talking must be realized. How to realize, you will ask me, and my answer is by listening, by thinking, and by nididhyasana, which is not exactly meditation, but some similar process, attempt to realize. In that way, evam vare drashtavya. In this way it has to be realized. So Swamiji takes up that, and he has explained in great detail the meaning of practical Vedanta to be Shravan, Manan and Nididhyasana. And then automatically Swamiji describes what happens to life when it has been realized. So that is the real practical Vedanta in its fullest measure. So in these three phases, Swamiji has explained his practical Vedanta. That is the perspective while reading this book. So, not only that to look upon Jiva as Brahman, that is the implication of Vedanta. That is the first point. The implication of Vedanta has been put into practice along with several other virtues like self-confidence, like universal love, etc., etc. In that way, Swamiji has described the implications, and then Shravan Manan Nidhasan is the real practical Vedanta. And the result is the resultant practical Vedanta. So with this now, let us turn to the text. Because the name practical Vedanta had to be understood, and that is why I gave a talk on perspective. According to Swami Vivekananda, nothing was my own. From these 4 lectures, what I gathered or what I learned from my Guruji, that I put before you. Now let us read. I have been asked to say something about the practical position of the Vedanta philosophy. Because he was asked, so he replied, where is the question of Deussen and Schopenhauer? And he was asked because he was speaking on the Chandogya Upanishad. As I have told you, theory is very good indeed, but how are we to carry it into practice? If it be absolutely impracticable, no theory is of any value whatever except as intellectual gymnastics. That is how Vedanta is taken by the scholars. Intellectual gymnastics. So, if it cannot be put into practice, it is intellectual gymnastics. The Vedanta, therefore, as a religion, must be intensely practical. Important thing here. What? Swamiji does not take Vedanta to be only philosophy. He takes it as religion. Nowadays, there is a habit among so-called people to decry the term religion. Because by religion they understand the ritualistic part or the social part of religion. And in Swamiji's mind, religion means realization. Religion means spirituality. These days there is an attempt to separate religion and spirituality. We want spirituality, we don't want religion. Foolishness. Religion is spirituality. Now, Vedanta is not only, what is the difference now? Philosophy is an intellectual gymnastics. Intellectually trying to understand the nature of truth is called philosophy. And religion means how that comes into life. How that Vedanta becomes practical. That is religion. So, in Swamiji's mind, Vedanta is not only philosophy, it is a beautiful philosophy, as Swamiji has said, but it is not only a beautiful philosophy, it is something which can be brought to life. And so, Vedanta, therefore, as a religion, must be intensely practical. Intensely practical as a religion. We must be able to carry it out in every part of our lives. Another thing, in the West in those days, now I do not know, there was a clear distinction between the life of society and religious life. And there was saying in English, give what is due to the Caesar and give what is due to the Pope or God. So, we see in India today, many people, especially the business community, will be doing puja for maybe 2 hours in the morning. And when they go to their business place, all that will be dropped. And they are practical in earning money by good and bad means. So this is religion, this is practical life. Swamiji said, if it is religion, it has to transform our life. And it has to enter into every part of our life. Next sentence, Swamiji still more clears it. And not only this, the fictitious differentiation between religion and the life of the world must vanish. Fictitious differentiation. That means the differentiation between life of the world and life of religion is a fiction imagined by our mind. It is not real. If it is religion, religion is the way of life. If religion is the way of life, it should transform our entire life. This differentiation itself should go. And that also Swamiji bases upon Vedanta. For the Vedanta teaches oneness, one life throughout. Vedanta will not like this idea at all, that you have business life and you have this life and you have that life. Fragmented life will lead you nowhere. So the Vedanta is teaching life is one. Whether you are worshipping God, whether you are doing your duties to your parents, whether you are earning money, whether you are doing anything in the world, you must be progressing towards realization. And so this difference itself is fictitious. And Swamiji refers to that because that was very prevalent in England in those days. The ideals of religion must cover the whole field of life, whole field. They must enter into all our thoughts and more into practice. See, first they have to enter into our thoughts. Thoughts is the general term used. Thoughts, feelings, aspirations, experience, realization, and then more and more into practice. When this happens, automatically they will come out in our practical life. I will enter gradually on the practical side as we proceed. but this series of lectures is intended to be a basis. And so we must first apply ourselves to theories and understand how they are worked out. So the link, as I told you, theory, practical, between that theory of the practical, that is what Swamiji is teaching. And said that actual practice we shall develop later on. Let us first think of this. Very clear? Proceeding from forest caves to busy streets and cities. Proceeding from forest caves, there the original researches in Vedanta are made by people who live in forest, and they struggle and they realize certain truths and they teach it to the students. But as Swamiji will show, the most of the Vedanta has been developed not only in forest but in busy cities. And so, this is the practical aspect, that in actual life, our life, civil life, we have to put those into practice. The full sentence let me read again. But this series of lectures is intended to be a basis, and so we must first apply ourselves to theories and understand how they are worked out, proceeding from forest caves to busy streets and cities. And one peculiar feature we find is that many of these thoughts have been the outcome not of retirement into forest, but have emanated from persons whom we expect to lead the busiest life, from ruling monarchs. What is the meaning of the word ruling monarch? Today in Great Britain or England, the political system is that the Prime Minister or the democratically elected government is responsible. But there is a titular king. His position is mostly decorative. So he is a titular king, not monarch, ruling monarch. But in the olden days, famous example is Janaka the great king, and in Chandogya and in Brihadaranyaka, several other kings. So, ruling monarch, the one single man, monarch is a single man, king, who is ruling actually his people, and in his life these ideas or these truths have been realized. So that is, first of all, Swamiji shows, see, Vedanta is practical or not? They could do it, so why not we? Swamiji gives an example. This is from the 5th chapter of Chandogya Upanishad. The story which Swamiji is telling now is from the 5th chapter of Chandogya. Chandogya Upanishad has 8 chapters. And this story is from the 5th chapter. Shvetaketu was the son of Aruni, a sage, most probably a recluse. Most probably because in Vedanti books, historical or social facts are not at all given in detail, they are not concerned with that. But it appears that he was a recluse, because he had an ashrama, he was teaching his pupils. So, most probably a recluse, Aruni. He was brought up in the forest, but he went to the city of the Panchalas. Panchalas was a kingdom, and appeared at the court of the king Pravahana Jaivali, a ruling monarch. The king asked him, he went to show his scholarship, Shvetaketu, and so he went to the court. But instead of his telling knowledge, the king asked him certain questions. The king asked him, do you know how beings depart hence at death? Hence means from here. From here, how they depart at death, do you know? No, sir. Do you know how they return hither? No, sir. Do you know the way of the fathers and the way of the gods? what we call Dakshinayan, Uttarayan, Pitru, Yan and Devayan. So, do you know there are two separate paths? No, sir. Then the king asked other questions. Shvetaketu could not answer them. So the king told him that he knew nothing. The boy went back to his father, and the father admitted that he himself could not answer these questions. It was not that he was unwilling to answer these questions, it was not that he was unwilling to teach the boy, but he did not know these things. No, he was a wise man. He found that he does not know some truths of life. Well, the king knows. So, though traditionally the Brahmins or the recluses were taken to be the teachers, and the Kshatriyas, the warrior caste or the kings, the administrators, were taken as number two in caste, and they were supposed to learn from the Brahmins. That was the normal social custom. So he went to the king and asked to be taught these secrets. The king said that these things had been hitherto known only among kings. In the Gita we find this. In the 4th chapter, Krishna is telling that I taught it to Surya, and he taught to Manu and Ikshvaku, and it was known among the sages among kings, Rajarshayo Vidu. So certain secrets or truths of Vedanta are cultivated by the kings, and the Brahmins have to learn from them. Though most of the important truths the Brahmins may discover, but certain things have to be learned from the kings. The king said that these things had been hitherto known only among kings. The priests never knew them. He, however, proceeded to teach him what he desired to know. So he said, let alone the social customs. Who should teach him? I know you want to learn, I am ready to teach you. In various Upanishads we find that this Vedanta philosophy, so Vedanta is philosophy also and religion also, is not the outcome of meditation in the forest only. It is outcome of meditation in the forest, but not only. But the very best parts of it were thought out and expressed by brains which were busiest in the everyday affairs of life. We cannot conceive any man busier than an absolute monarch, not titular head, absolute monarch. One person having the absolute governorship of the entire state. A man who is ruling over millions of people, and yet some of these rulers were deep thinkers. So you get several of them in various Upanishads. Everything goes to show that this philosophy must be very practical. And later on, when we come to the Bhagavad Gita, most of you perhaps have read it because it has become quite popular among the sincere people in England and also in America, because Edwin Arnold had translated it in the name Song Celestial. And later on, when you come to the Bhagavad Gita, most of you perhaps have read it. It is the best commentary we have on the Vedanta philosophy. Swamiji calls Gita to be the best commentary on the Vedanta. That means to understand the import of Vedanta, best is Bhagavad Gita. Curiously enough, the scene is laid on the battlefield, where Krishna teaches this philosophy to Arjuna on the battlefield. And the doctrine which stands out luminously in every page of the Gita is intense activity, but in the midst of it, eternal calmness. So, practical Vedanta. This is the secret of work, to attain which is the goal of the Vedanta. So what is the goal of the Vedanta? Externally, let there be activity. Inside, total peace. This is the goal of Vedanta. And it is shown in the Bhagavad Gita. Inactivity, as we understand it in the sense of passivity, certainly cannot be the goal. Many people mistake this. Passivity is not the goal. Where it is so, then the walls around us would be the most intelligent. They are inactive. Plots of earth, stumps of trees would be the greatest sages in the world. They are inactive. Now the other side, let us be active. Forget everything, let us be active. Nor does inactivity become activity when it is combined with passion. So our work mostly is out of kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsar. That is called passion. And some passion takes hold of us, we work, that is not desired. Inactivity is not desired, work out of passion is not desired. Work is always for the good of the world, and inside we must be absolutely calm. That is the ideal of Vedanta. Real activity, which is the goal of Vedanta, is combined with eternal calmness. The calmness which cannot be ruffled. The balance of mind which is never disturbed. Gita, Sita Prajna Lakshana. Whatever happens, and we all know from our experience in life, that is the best attitude for work. Now Swamiji is dealing with this point. I have been asked many times how we can work if we do not have the passion which we generally feel for work. I also thought in that way years ago. So by putting his own example, how he outgrew and how he understood the better thing, he is inculcating that easily in us. This is a typical habit of Sri Ramakrishna and his disciples. They would give themselves as the example. I also felt like this, but then I come out of it, I understood the truth, so you can do also like that. But as I am growing older, getting more experience, I find it is not true. The less passion there is, the better we work. The calmer we are, the better for us, and the more the amount of work we can do. When we let loose our feelings, we waste so much energy, shatter our nerves, disturb our minds, and accomplish very little work. The energy which ought to have gone out as work is spent as mere feeling, which counts for nothing. It is only when the mind is very calm and collected that the whole of its energy is spent in doing good work. And if you read the lives of the great workers which the world has produced, you will find that they were wonderfully calm men. Nothing as it were could throw them off their balance. That is why the man who becomes angry never does a great amount of work, and the man whom nothing can make angry accomplishes so much. So one implication Swamiji on the way is showing. The man who gives way to anger or hatred or any other passion cannot work. He only breaks himself to pieces and does nothing practical. It is the calm, forgiving, equable, well-balanced mind that does the greatest amount of work. So, this is what Swamiji's introduction to Vedanta being practical. Then Swamiji will show gradually what is the real meaning of practicality. That is the next topic. Better we talk it in the next day. The real meaning of practicality. What I can do, that is not practical. What I want to achieve will be practical. So, Swamiji will take up this topic and we shall follow it in the next day. So, you have patiently heard the background, why practical Vedanta, which was a part of Jnana Yoga, because the bulk of the volume it has been separated and it has to be studied before Jnana Yoga to make it more practical. and we have started reading it today, and with Swamiji's guidance, we are sure to achieve that. Om Paratatve Sadalino Ramakrishna Samagya Yo Dharma Sthapana Rato Vire Shamtam Namamyam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanam.